Welcome to the first episode of DownThereForDancin, the podcast, which is a spin-off of the UWS radio show Up There for Thinking, with myself, Adam Kennedy, and we're joined by Miguel Mcintosh. First of all, Miguel, how are you?
I'm very good. Kendall, how are we doing?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, I've had a busy day, but, you know, near enough at the end of it, thankfully. But I say that because the rest of my day has, quite frankly, been, you know, rank rotten at best. However, kicking off this podcast, that's it. And you've somehow managed to secure an interview. Remarkable. I'm so proud. Well done, son. Good effort. We're joined by Frazier Climo.
Perfect.
Is that right?
Yeah, Climo.
Yeah. Well, he says Climo or Climo, but right. we're going with it. Frazier.
Okay.
That's what he'll be known as, to avoid any confusion with the surname. How are you, sir?
Good, lads. Yeah, I'm excited for this. I've been looking forward to it.
I think you're the only one, to be fair, mate.
Cheers, mate. I was going to say something nice. You've just fired it then.
So I'm a fan of podcasting. I listen to my fair share. So.
Oh, do you?
This is my first actually time in something like this. So.
What's your favourite podcast?
I listen to a lot of. There's ones from back. It's Rugby sort of ones, mate. At the moment, Rugby Bricks in New Zealand. They get some good sort of coaches and stuff on that, and guys I've played with, and just I take a fair bit away from them actually, and sort of put into stuff I do with the academies and that. So.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So when you're seeing like former teammates getting interviewed, you're thinking that guy chats a load of absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I look at it, man. I think shit. I've come a fair way now. I've been here. Like, they'll be watching this and they'll be thinking, shit, he's gone on to do good things.
Absolutely. This is the one.
If this is good things, then I worry about what's bad things. I think. To be honest, shall we just talk about the Six Nations?
Aye.
Straight off the bat, because obviously we're a third of the way through the tournament already, and well, more than, given that it's 2 out of the 5 fixtures being played. As it currently stands, France top the table with 9 points from their 2 games, a points difference of 33, picking up an additional bonus point. And we've got England and Ireland second and third respectively on 6 points apiece. England boasting a slightly better points difference, but then again they did play Italy in their last fixture, so let's be honest. I mean, I reckon that there's 5 of us in this room. I think we could give it a go against the Italians. I really do.
Just keep giving the ball to him.
Aye. That's use and abuse. We've of course got the mighty Scotland sat in 4th place. Everybody getting excited with that Calcutta Cup victory to then, you know, have what would have been, I say a draw, but I'd like to be a little bit more ambitious and try and claim that we could have won in Cardiff, but of course it was snatched away from us at the very last by Wales, who are underneath us on 4 points, and Italy propping up the table. God bless Italy. Minus 60 point difference after 2 games.
You've done your homework, haven't you?
Well, that was just before you came in, mate, because I rugby back in the day, I'd go with like my granddad to Murrayfield and whatever, because I'd have football with my dad, rugby with my granddad. But I don't know, just in the past few years, I don't know what it is. I've just fallen a wee bit out of love with it.
Have you?
Yeah, a wee bit. I don't know why. Nothing's prompted it.
I think it would be a good time to start falling back in love with it, maybe, because
we need to get him down Millbrae. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Get down there and watch a game live, made of proper club rugby, but.
Are we talking? So what? Do you think that the rugby scene in Scotland is continually on the up then?
Mate, looking at the Scotland squad, right, and I've heard a lot of people say this, like, there's never been as much depth in Scottish rugby at that level than there is now. Like, people are genuinely saying Scotland, they still are. I think they'll beat France this weekend.
I think we're looking at 3 homes for the upcoming fixtures, to be honest.
Yeah, well,
if you want, I've got them in front of me. So Scotland host France at Murrayfield. That's the Saturday early. You've then got England, Wales at Twickenham. Yeah. And Ireland host Italy on the Sunday. Yeah. So that seems a nap.
I just think
3 homes.
I think the weather's probably not going to be great. It's and I think that'll probably suit. Well, French is pretty big up front, but I just think after a week off, they'll be the Scottish boys will be back down to earth after that result in Cardiff, and
replenished and want to bounce back with a win.
I think it'll just be a good time to catch the French, and they generally, like, the French team now is improving. They've got, they're in good hands with coaching wise, but I still think they can struggle away from home. And I think this is their first away game. I think if they had 2 home games, you'd be able to tell me that.
Yes, they have. Yeah. So they've played both Italy and Ireland in
so
Paris.
I think first away game, and people always say you never know what to expect from the French, and I think that's still the case. But they could come and they could wipe the floor of Scotland, but I think Scottish boys get up.
It's that backline of Scotland that really impresses me. It was a podcast I watched, Cammy Redpath, and I never even noticed it. But when he played his debut in the previous Calcutta Cup, it was obviously without fans. Every single one of the backs was a British and Irish line except for him. I mean, I don't think you'd ever be able to say that about Scotland in the past.
To be a world-class team, you need sort of, I reckon, 5 or 6 world-class players, and they've got like Hoggy, Finn Russell when he's on his game. It's generally like he doesn't have many bad games.
Young
now. Hamish Watson,
like
Ali Price, there's plenty of world-class players throughout that team, and that's
Doohan as well, actually.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you. What would be considered a successful tournament for Scotland? Because everybody, well, I say everybody, I think there would have been a fair few that could have perhaps tipped Scotland as a dark horse.
Yeah.
But would I know it sounds daft, but would like a top 3, would that be considered a success and try and push for it next year? Or
probably would be, but I'd still be slightly disappointed with that. I reckon they'll win this weekend, and it'll all be on the last round game, because they'll beat Italy away, so it'll be all on the island.
You'd hope so.
You have to go there, but one-off game, all to play for. It's like, well, you give yourself a good chance. So
I think it's just a Scottish mentality, but to play better when the pressure's not when the pressure's really on. See, when
generally the Scottish rugby team do better when they're the underdogs. See, when the pressure, because everyone thought they'd win at Wales.
So that's what I kind of meant. They do better when they've got almost like nothing to lose. It's once the games come along where they finally sort of expected to do something. It seems to.
But what's that down to? Is that complacency kicking in?
I think it's just culture. It happens in the football team as well.
Everybody gets gassed because we've beaten England, and that's it. You know, it's Grand Slam time surely after that first match.
Winning's a bit of a habit, mate. I think, especially the rugby team, generally haven't found themselves in a position to sort of be contenders for big tournaments or big games, and I think that will do it.
Yeah.
I reckon. I don't know what the odds are, because I might chuck a tenner on it. But I reckon they'll be paying good money.
Shall we check it? I'm very tempted to check. Now
you're the stat man, mate.
You've got me tempted, and I do like a little punt every now and then.
They win this weekend.
Sorry, Mum and Dad, if you're watching.
They have to, obviously, the other games, depending on results this weekend, but England will go and play France in that last game as well. So there's 2 big games going to the last round, which is what makes it good viewing for everyone, doesn't it? On a Super Saturday.
You can't really ever count England or France out, but see, watching Marcus Smith, I've never, in terms of, he's one of those players, like, take me, like, I would say that I still understand a decent amount of rugby when I'm watching it, right?
Yeah.
But even when you're watching something like Marcus Smith, you can see just how good he is.
Yeah, he's
like,
pretty gifted.
Folk aren't like even coming towards him sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, that line speed, they're trying to come out quick. That guy, it's like,
the good players doing that? Look like they've got time on the ball, and he does, mate. Like, his skill set's so good, and he's done it at club level for the last few years, and now he's getting a shot. And teams are going to go at him, but like, it's one of those players that always seems to have time on the ball, and like so he's pretty sharp.
I've got the betting market up for the Six Nations 2022 outright, and Sky Bet, plenty other bookmakers available, but they're obviously the main one for me, the main daddy. With the current table, the way that it sits, they only have one sort of position change, if you like. So they've got France 4-7 to win the whole thing.
Wow, that's too short for me.
I'd agree with that. Ireland 7-2 next up. Obviously, the Irish currently sat in third, albeit only on points difference behind England. England themselves are 5-1, but Sky are being generous and will give you a massive 6-1 for them to win the Six Nations. Scotland are obviously fourth favourites. What are we thinking?
14-1.
If it's 6-1, it's 15-1.
What did you say?
14-1, did I?
And you said 15. 16, so the bookies have been a little bit more generous. And then you've got Wales at 33 and the Italians 1,000 to 1.
Be interesting to see what that goes to if they win this weekend against the French.
I suppose the French are the only ones that can claim a Grand Slam now as well. Do you think Scotland could maybe use that to their advantage as well and think,
mate,
do you know what?
The last game in the Six Nations at Murrayfield, like huge amount to play for. They've copped a little bit from the Welsh result, and I think Gregor will have them up for it. I just at Murrayfield, mate, Scotland are a different side. Just like the Welsh are at home. Like you look at that Welsh team that played away to Ireland the first round, terrible, mate. And then all of a sudden they play at the Millennium Stadium with Welsh fans singing behind them, and they're a new team.
So, leaks are plenty in the
Scottish,
crowd. Love that.
Yeah, Scotland are the same, mate. So I think they'll do it.
Love that. Love the optimism. Who've been your standout players of the tournament so far?
Hamish Watson's been pretty. He's just everywhere.
I just love watching him, but
he's an animal.
Third most successful tackles in the tournament so far.
He's so strong. Like he's not a massive bloke, but
he's quite a small. Is it flanker he's playing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that position there, like your copper beating, at breakdowns and stuff like that, and he's just animal.
In about at a time.
He's into it. Like so strong.
So it'd be Hamish, the outstanding Scottish candidate.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't watched many of the other games. To be honest with you.
Just the Scotland games?
Yeah, I tune in for the Scotland games.
Love that.
Wales have been not great. There haven't been any standouts for them.
They've got quite am I right in saying they've got quite like not a boring style play, but like teams will sometimes go on attack, say they get a penalty, they'll kick out, try. They're quite happy to always take the 3 points every single time.
Yeah.
Can't stand that.
Yeah.
The Ireland... The Irish scrum half, Jamison Gibson Park, played with him back in New Zealand.
Did you? He's already name dropping.
That's it. I was going to come on to your career next, mate, but Jesus, you've skipped a couple of chapters here, you know.
Well. Yeah, so he played real well. I think it was against France. Yeah, he scored a try.
I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, Jamo's been going well. So he's gone so well, and he's back. I remember played back at home with him, club rugby. Then we played a bit for Taranaki, and then. He played, I think he was in the Super Rugby squads, but didn't really get a decent crack at it. And then spent his 3 years in Ireland, and look at him now. I think if there was an British and Irish Lions squad to be picked next week, he'd be in it.
Yeah.
So not bad for a little.
We claim to fame there for yourself.
Yeah.
Mate, I ain't the last of
them. No, that's just the first of many, isn't it? That's exactly what we want. Your arrogance.
Yeah,
not gonna lie, mate. We're here to hear you out a wee bit.
Yeah.
Us Kiwis are pretty laid back and humble, mate. So
need a little bit of controversy in there as well.
Yeah.
Like I say, we need some beef to elevate us first and foremost.
We'll see how we go.
I guess we can move on now to your career in essence.
Yeah.
Started out just as a young Kiwi. That's because obviously I've got family that are from New Zealand,
right.
And they are like, I've never seen a nation as obsessed with the sport. I don't think they absolutely love the rugby, don't they?
Mate, it's schoolboy rugby. That's the reason why New Zealand rugby is so strong. It's like you go there, and even at I remember my first day at high school. Went there, and you lined up. You go to a hall, and then you, as a little 12, 13-year-old fella, no hairs on his chin, nothing. You're facing a haka with all like boys that in their last year of school, they do a haka to you. And like when I say a haka, they're not just sort of having it; they're going for it. They're right in your face, and like it was pretty scary, mate. So straight from then, you're like, whoa. And then I remember like school first 15 rugby games, the whole school goes out and watches. So you got 1,200 boys. Like we played our school ground was a gully field. So on one side of the gully ground, you've got 1,200 boys in the middle afternoon watch, and then the other side you got all supporters and all that sort of stuff. And then you do the school haka all together. So you got 1,200 boys doing a haka at the same time.
My word.
So the noise and
that's a sight.
That's awesome, mate. So that just filters down through the teams, but it's so strong and just and that's why the first 15 club level back in New Zealand is televised. It's everything.
It's basically like sort of take American football for example. In America, they like the college ball. They love it.
Yeah.
It's like
I'm just thinking of like every single American film. There's always like some football scene.
Why has there never been one of like 1,200 guys doing the haka in like the middle of a rugby pitch? That is epic. That is mad.
Every time it gets a bit of TV time back in New Zealand when they play because it's the first 15 run. The whole team will run down they come from the top of the hill and they run down. There's the boarders, the boys that stay at the school. Live there, so they're called the Boarders. And
that's what I was going to ask
you.
They
generally come all from around.
It was a all boys school when I
all boys school. Yeah, so the Plymouth Girls High was just across the graveyard. So Boys during
Not too
lunchtime
far.
would sneak across.
Love that. A couple of Casanovas in the
Yeah,
ranks,
you
no
always
doubt.
meet up halfway, mate.
No
But,
doubt. So when you're sort of, what did you say, 13, and
Yeah.
you're looking at these
yeah,
lads, and are you just bricking it, thinking,
I am, mate.
or is it? Do you think of it from kind of a physical standpoint, where you're like, I've got levels to go before I'm
'cause
even?
in New Zealand, like, you've got a lot of Maori boys, Polynesian boys, obviously make up a fair bit of it too. So,
Yeah.
and these boys physically develop so early compared to us white battlers. Like,
Nah, they are.
yeah,
Definitely levels.
and like, so they're like in your face, like bloodshot eyes, and you're like,
And you're bricking it for
don't
want
want
of a
to
better
look, but you
phrase.
have to, like, 'cause they say, look at him, and so like, oh, but then from there, it's installed at you so young, mate, that everyone learns the school haka. You have house competitions, so you fellas have houses
Yeah.
over here. So you do the haka as a house, and you get marked on it, and it's just culture, mate. The culture is right through, and it just goes right up.
That's just ingrained into
It's
you, then,
ingrained,
isn't it?
yeah,
you
100%.
You can't really buy into it or whatever.
And
It's
then
just
obviously I do my work in the schools here, and I just find myself comparing it, and it's like, wow, like
Miles
you
off
wouldn't
of
even get a first 15 enough players. You wouldn't get 15 rugby players at schools.
We didn't. I mean, I
At the
played.
private schools you would, like the big Glasgow and Edinburgh ones, but around here it's like,
It's funny you mentioned round here, because we are, of course, at the UWS Air campus filming this. How on earth did Air pick you up at 21?
21, 2008, am I right?
yeah, Miguel's on it.
Done his
There's,
research, the boy.
Yeah, so there's a past player, Scott Lyons, played a few sort of Sale Sharks over here. So he played for the same club that I did back in New Zealand, and he captained Air for a couple of years, I think, and then he retired and moved back home. And then he just come and watched one of our club games and said, "Look, Air are looking for a standoff. Do you fancy going over for 6 months?" And I was like, I was in like an academy, but
So it's a trial in essence, but it's
just 6
not.
months, like come over, have a good time, and then because it would have been summer, so I wasn't really missing out on much in New Zealand, because when it's winter here, it's obviously summer back home. So
And the young naivety within you just
I thought-
thinks,
I thought,
sack
yeah,
this.
look, I thought, oh, definitely. So I come over, and then the club had a real good year. We won the premiership for the first time ever.
Wow.
So there was a big party, and then I ended up playing. After the season finished here, I went back to New Zealand and played, and then I was on a 2-year sort of visa. So I thought, yeah, so I fancy another crack at that. So I went winter to winter for like 2 years. So I was pretty pasty.
So during the time that you were playing here in the alternative, when you were off season here, you'd have went back over and played.
Yep.
Ah,
Yeah.
see.
So I did that for a
Ends up
couple
with a
of years.
Scotland flag on his face because he's blue and white for the call.
That's it, mate. And then and then once I did my second season here, there was a little bit of noise going around. I was getting calls from, what was the coach back then? Robinson. I forgot his first name actually. He was coaching. It was Gregor Townsend. He was in the mix as well, and I forgot his name. Robinson. You better tell me you're the stat man.
No.
So he was he was the coach of the Scotland team at the time, and there was just like he phoned up. I think he phoned up.
Was he Townsend's predecessor?
I think he was. Yeah.
Nah, there was a couple. Nah.
Man, lack of knowledge.
Gregor
Being
did
exposed here.
Glasgow
My
first.
grandfather would be disgusted.
I think he
with
was
me
maybe
right
a
now.
selector or something. But so they didn't phone me. They phoned the club, the senior men at the club, and said, "Look, just checking my availability on whether I can represent Scotland and all that sort of stuff."
Right.
So I was like, "Wow!" So and then
So what's this? Like a passport inquiry in essence?
yeah, pretty much,
Right.
pretty much to
And
find out.
you qualify.
I didn't, because you needed
not?
your grandfather, like
Right.
interest visa, and my was like my great grandfather was maybe born in Scotland, so it didn't count. So after all this hype, and I sit down having meetings and all this sort of stuff, I was getting pretty excited. Like, gee, I could get a pro contract over here, and then potentially down the line play international rugby for
So
Scotland.
is that the way it worked back then? So Scotland Rugby would have given you the contract rather than
Well,
Ayr or
if you
Glasgow?
qualify to play, to be here, to live on a permanent basis, then obviously you get a contract with Glasgow, and then if you play good at club level, you go. So it wouldn't have just been straight from Ayr to Scotland. You would have needed to play at that next level, but they were just. So I was like, gee, and then so end of it. Long story short, it didn't happen. I went back home, and I actually met. Just a couple of weeks before I went back to New Zealand, I met my wife now. So, yeah. And I ended up coming back over on a student visa for 6 months. So we come back over, and then I got offered a contract to go back to New Zealand. So I had to take that. I played for Taranaki, something I never thought I'd do. So I got that chance to go back, and my wife, she ended up coming back with me, and
nice.
yeah,
she went to New Zealand.
Lovely.
She lived there for they were there for about 3 years before we came back over to Wales. But she loved it. Like, if it wasn't for me, we'd still be there because she loved it.
Because of you.
Yeah, I got offered a contract.
The weather's a wee bit worse though, isn't it?
Man, weather. Don't start me on the weather.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, see when you first come over, because it's like I feel like football, you can sometimes get away with it, right? Like everybody's running about. I've played in the wing in a cold day, being from living in this country. It's easy to get cold sometimes. There's lots of breakdowns, lots of stuff going on. What did you feel like when you were actually first in a rugby pitch?
You're standing about waiting on the ball as a winger.
Yeah, like you definitely. It was more, mate. It was more training. So in the game, you warmed up, adrenaline's going. You don't unless it's absolute pissing down and it's like the ground's freezing, which happened a couple of times during training. Like we'd start training, and then by 45 minutes later, like your studs can't break the bloody dirt.
Wow.
That was when that was like the worst.
Horrible.
Like 2010, maybe where that the bad.
I think that's right. I think that was the real bad
that was
winter.
horrendous, mate. So that was, and I was like, wow, this is bad.
So see that 2008, 2009 winning team. There's some like players that went on obviously to play internationally as well as Gordon Reid.
Gordy.
There was.
Oh, that's it, mate. Just get some more name drops in there. I like
I'm
your
getting
style.
them out.
That's it.
They're
I
in.
like it.
Because the way I was fact checking this earlier, I was looking at one of the pictures and I couldn't see you in that one, but I definitely knew he was in there. So I was doing all this stuff otherwise, but it was like even obviously Stuart Fenn. How did it go from like not winning anything like that beforehand to
they had
winning,
like with Pat MacArthur as well.
So it was, yeah. He was just the Bills coach there, wasn't he?
Yeah, we met like they've always been renowned for having big, massive forwards. There was a guy called Skippy, and like he's an air legend, mate. Like,
the bald.
He's second row. Yeah, I think shaved head, but he was like just one of the biggest humans I've ever seen. Like in the gym, not overly strong, but just natural. Like you get him on a rugby pitch, mate, and he just I'd never seen. Like I'd played with some big boys back home, big Islanders and stuff like that.
Wow,
this fella just
that is a statement.
A big Aussie bastard that just hammered boys, mate. He was like he's probably about 6'4", 6'5". But like maybe 120, 150, but he was just, he's just a big lump of a man. So
a big lump.
He was, yeah. So he was a legend and still is. So he had guys like that. They probably just lacked someone that could kick goals, from what I've heard. That's why they didn't quite reach the levels that they're expected to. So I come over and kicked a few points, and that's
80% success rate.
Oof.
Just dropping out.
These are stats, man.
So yeah, and that's. And
just making me look good.
Joe, 80%. I thought it was quite light-hearted. I'm sure I've been watching you for years, man. I've not seen you miss one, so
there was
serious. I'm not kidding.
It was always it was one of my strengths that sort of got me in teams, I suppose. And
was that the only reason?
Well, I'd like to think there's a couple more.
Of course, exactly. Producer Luke is without a doubt the star of this show, rather than us two numpties that. On the radio show and the podcast or whatever. He informs me that it was Andy Robinson.
Andy, that's it, mate.
Andy Robinson. There we go.
So yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's those days.
So Andy, if you're watching, apologies that we didn't know you.
Sorry, mate. Yeah.
Step it up.
So Taranaki, am I pronouncing that correct?
Taranaki. Yep.
What was that like compared? Just for obviously viewers that tune in from Scotland, they might not have a idea in terms of the type of club it was. Was it a provincial club like Ayr?
Yep.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I played. When I first started with that Scott Lions, who I mentioned earlier. I played for Taranaki's a region, and then you have different clubs. So I played for New Plymouth Old Boys, and from there, so he came back to one of those games.
Was that a hometown team then? I take it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's about probably 4 or 5 clubs in New Plymouth.
Right.
And so we have a big club competition.
Okay.
So yeah, he came and watched one of the. At that point, I hadn't played for Taranaki yet. So Taranaki's like the NPC, the big national competition. So I was only a young fella, mate, and I was going in academies, but yeah, so hits, and then played at Taranaki, and like there you're playing against like back you don't, not so much these days, but back then, a lot of the big players would play in that NPC. So you're playing against like All Blacks, and you're like, wow, this is pretty daunting for a young.
When I was looking at like the notable players who went through, I mean, you went through the same school as like the 3 Barrett brothers.
Yeah. Hang on. Not the same school. They played, so the big rival. They played for a big rival school.
I apologise. Taranaki. As a club. The club. Sorry, I did get it wrong.
Yeah.
Apologies. The same club. It was the 3 Geordie brothers. Naholu as well. So it's like, even the players before then. Excuse my knowledge. I know who they are, but I couldn't say the same confidence. Like you already know what you're going in, like playing at that level.
I mean, we had those like back home. There's a shield. You play for the Ranfurly Shield, and that's probably. If you're not being an All Black, one of the biggest things you can play for, I reckon, is the Ranfurly Shield. It's huge in history and that. So I played for Taranaki. We went down and played Temple Southland down the bottom of the South Island, and Taranaki hadn't won the Shield for 20 plus years, and no one expected us to go down to Southland because you've got to go and play so the team that's got it, you only put it up for grabs when you play a home game. So someone's got to come to you and take it off you. So I think
challengers.
Southland had it for a good season. So we went down there and won it, mate. And then it was awesome. Like you have a big parade down the middle of the street, main street, on getting on cars and back of utes, and
that's unbelievable.
Show it off to all the fans, and it's.
So he's not just came and won the first for there. He's won the first.
That's
for Taranaki.
It was
well
awesome.
Decorated.
Because growing up,
you're on, mate.
Yeah, oh, mate. So growing up,
you'll know those things, but won't you?
What's that?
Well, like growing up, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you'll know those things growing up. Like, we've not won that for.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Like,
is that incredibly motivating? Does that drive you and countless others?
Yeah, like if you're playing like schoolboy rugby, the next level you want to get to is NPC, so you can and to be a part of that sort of stuff. Like, but at school, I was never like I didn't even play first 15 rugby. I played third 15 rugby. So like growing up, I loved watching rugby and so, but I never thought I'd make it to like even the old boys first team. Mm-hmm. Like I never thought. So all of a sudden I'm playing for Taranaki and it's like, gee, this is pretty good.
Did you always play the same? Well, obviously we'll go on to like different positions, but like when you were at New Zealand, did you always play standoff? Was that?
I did growing up, but then because I was always pretty quick, so when I got to that next level, like they thought, right, we'll chuck you on the wing, and I made I suppose I made a bit of my name for myself at that level on the wing, but always naturally I always wanted to play at first receiver because you get more touches of the ball, and if you've got a good kicking game, that's the position you can use it. And
feel more comfortable with it.
There was a guy called Bodie Barrett playing at standoff for Taranaki, so I wasn't going to get much of a.
Oh, what is he? Same time.
Same time, yeah. He's a little bit younger, but.
That's a World Player of the Year he's just dropped, by the way.
That's another name drop there for you.
Casual.
You missed that one, didn't you?
just casually, mate. I do apologise. I've had a busy day, mate. Look, come on.
I'm not going to lie.
He's a break.
Both of you and Bowden Barrett are like extremely quick fly-ups. Like he's a rocket as well, isn't he?
Yeah, and that's if you got that pace at standoff, mate. You've any gaps, you can go for them pretty quick. So it always helps. Yeah, like Finn Russell's the same. He's pretty quick. Just eye for a gap and you go on, mate. It helps you.
Nice. So next one was Scarlets. Obviously, next move on there was
another massive rugby nation.
I mean,
despite there's 4 senior Welsh clubs, isn't there?
Yeah.
All right.
Cardiff,
Scarlets, Ospreys,
and Dragons.
That's right.
Like going there was, mate, they love it. Similar to Taranaki, New Zealand, like the Welsh are rugby mad. So he went there. And, I went there, and I suppose the thing that hit me was just the style of rugby. Like I'm back in New Zealand, open rugby, dry ball, and I went to Wales, and I suppose I didn't really back in New Zealand. You don't sort of pay attention to too much of the rugby what's happening over here. So I was a bit naive coming over, thinking, I'll just carry on where I left off.
You've got a very well-respected league in its own right, though. So it's definitely
at the time I think it was the Pro 12. It's changed now to the
14, isn't it now?
Yeah. I struggled. I was on the wing and I struggled for form, mate, because the game sort of didn't really suit me. I was finding myself chasing a lot of kicks, and Yeah, and then
did you have that little bit complacency, like you say, coming back over from New Zealand?
Yeah,
does that play on your mind, or?
I think I just sort of, when I turned up, I was coming off a bit of an injury, and then I probably wasn't in the best nick. Like, fitness-wise, wasn't quite there.
And then you're
struggled.
constantly
I was always catching up, mate.
Yeah.
I think the Welsh boys, like, you've got to get in there and you've got to earn their respect pretty quick, because I think they sort of see an outsider coming in. And yeah, but yeah, I struggled, and then I ended up breaking my leg, dislocating my ankle, towards the year when we were still looking at doing all that contract stuff was coming up. So once I did that, they were like, "Oh, sorry, mate, there's nothing here for you." So, and that's how I ended up back here.
Ouch.
Ruthless business, isn't it?
It is, mate. It is, but yeah, like end of the day, you've got to perform, and if you're not doing it, then see you later.
And I guess, had you not gone to Scarlets, would that perhaps been a little regret? Another massive, because Wales is probably, in terms of Britain, that's probably the main rugby country, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. They love it, mate. And I think at the time, I suppose the contract was too good to turn down. To be honest,
you can't, when it's a move like that, though. Whatever situation, you go for it. You know what I mean? You've got to take the risk with.
I had a few English clubs, but I'm not a fan of the big city. Like, New Plymouth, it's not massive. So there was a couple of London clubs, but I just didn't fancy London, because I just like Climo. It's quite small.
Do you think that was a big attraction then with Ayr? Because it's a small town, decently large, but it maybe looks as you're miles away from home. Do you know what I mean? So maybe it was that wee familiarity kind of.
At the time, like, I didn't really think too much. I'd never been outside the country by myself. So when I told Mum, I'm going over to Scotland in a couple of months, and that was it. So I sort of had to jump into it and crack on. But I'm glad I did, because I don't know what I'll be doing now.
What changed coming back from Ayr for a second spell in comparison to that first? Because obviously, like you've just touched on, you're a young man with that naivety, the move abroad, as it were, the first time around, and then coming back to the club in essence for a second spell. What are the sort of the big changes, both within you and Ayr itself?
I suppose in terms of the club, like, when I came back my second time here, like, the club had been at the top of Scotland, of club rugby in Scotland, for a long time. So you sort of go in there there was a bit of an expectation, like, oh, Climo's coming back, we're going to keep winning and all this sort of stuff. And when I turned up, like, they hadn't won anything. Like, it was sort of, so yeah, the club has got bigger and bigger over the years, more professional. There's like massive things happening. So when I turned up, it was more, right, there's an expectation to keep winning and keep doing well. Obviously, when I come the second time as well, when I first came over, I was single, and out we go, really, with the lads. But this time I had a daughter, like Miguel was born, and coming back with Michelle, and so I sort of, there's just a little more responsibility on me, mate, just to knuckle down and try and, make a career out of this now. Like, there's no more going back to New Zealand and chopping and changing. This was it. So.
And it certainly looks as though you've made a career out of it. Before we kind of wrap up, we're just going to get you to go through the all-time best 15 quickly that you've played with.
No pressure, mate.
Right.
No pressure whatsoever. I mean, we've already had a couple big hitters, so do your damnedest.
Okay. Starting the backs. At fullback, we'll go a guy, and he's a good mate of mine too, so I better... Kurt Baker. He played... These names will be nothing useful, but he played New Zealand. I think he's still involved with the New Zealand Sevens team. So yeah, he's a bit of a legend in Sevens rugby. But he was at fullback. Wingers Naholo, and I think I'll probably go a couple of Seta Tamanivalu as well.
Yeah,
I think he's in Japan now, but he was like two big, strong Fijian boys that could run, mate. So
no stopping it, sir.
Nah, midfield. Oh god. There's been a few. I'll come back to them. 10, obviously, Bodie Barrett, world player, 2-time World Player of the Year.
Just drop that in on the slide.
Still, he'll be the All Blacks. I think he's won a couple of World Cups. Like, he's...
no biggie.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. Like, even growing up through school.
I'm sure even the die-hard rugby fans might have to Google him later.
He was like the boy. Like, everyone knew this this kid's pretty special. 9, well, I'll go to Jamo, Gibson Park, playing for Ireland right now. Number 8, Blade Thompson. He's got a couple of Scottish caps, actually, now. I'm not too sure if he's involved in this squad, but he's there. Oh, man. He's got a couple of names. Charlie Natai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Just take Miguel's notes.
Just the whole list.
Yeah.
It's not much use, but he does have, his odd moments of magic.
There's Scott Waldrum, a few caps for the All Blacks. Jason Eaton, like all these, yeah. Like looking back now, the squad we had, even like at Taranaki, was like, wow, like there's All Blacks, and I'd never thought, mate, I'd be playing. Like,
let's be diplomatic to the Air Rugby Club fans. Say you could stick a couple of the club rugby boys in from here. So maybe in the midfield or the front row or something.
Yeah, we'll go,
Like
Big Skippy, the big Aussie. He'll go in the second row for sure, mate.
Is that the big bald geezer?
Yeah.
I never knew
He's
that.
back in Aussie now. He's been there for a few years, but I think his wife is Scottish, so he'll pop back over. So, and probably go a guy, Mark Bennett.
There we go.
Mark Bennett. Is that the one you're after?
Well, it was like you, Mark Bennett. They were sort of when I'm guessing this was your second stint kind of back here.
When I was sort of finishing up my first time, he was coming on. He was just at us playing. I think he was still schoolboy rugby, mate. And like he was just so committed. Like I don't think he drank or anything like that. He was just so focused on.
Am I right in saying he's an Ayrshire boy as well? But
yeah,
isn't
he started it. Yeah, and then once he sort of got towards the end of his under 18s rugby, he sort of came to Ayr and then
very illustrious sevens kid as well.
Yeah. He's like he was so. I just remember him being so committed, like, and he wanted it so much. And like I think he's in the Scotland squad now. He's on fire for Edinburgh.
Is he the 13?
He's 13, mate, for sure. And Ross Curl.
I remember him.
Yeah, he's a bit of a character. Man, he rubbed.
Was he? I can't remember. It was High Lynch. I think told me. Later something, he was like doing the budgie smuggler run around the pitch, and he was like, honestly, mate, he was so happy to do it. Like, he had the rig on him for it, so he was like, I'll halfway jog it around.
He was wild, mate. God.
Is he the biggest screwball you've played with?
He's up, yeah. Some of the things he did, like, oh my God, I got an intercept try, and then for the last 20 metres, he'd just run with the ball up in his head. And teams would hate him, mate. Teams would what an arrogant dick. Yeah, I remember, he could have scored under the post, but decided to score right in the corner in front of the stand. Ends up taking the kick, slots the kick.
No way.
And then just like this to the crowd. And everyone loves him, mate. Everyone loved it because it's not
could do it.
out of the norm. Like, genuinely, boys don't do that on the field, but he did it. And
that's cool.
He was good at it too.
So what have we got left? I think it's front row.
Front row. Guy, Michael Bent, who played for Ireland. Heaps of caps for Leinster. I think well over 100. He's definitely there. Andrew Hoare. Another All Blacks hooker, and a guy who when I first played for Old Boys, like a guy called Gordon Slater, and him and his brother Andy, legends back home. They played before the game went professional, and these boys were farmers. They'd milk cows in the morning, go and play, finish playing, go back in the afternoon and for the evening milk. They were just hardy farmers, man. Big sausage fingers, just like big hands
and grafters.
Crack.
It's that like inhumane strength, isn't it? It's like because they just deal with like tasks that none of us could even fathom.
I don't think they did gym sessions, but just
milk the cows.
Just farm work, mate. Lifting hay bales and like just naturally social. A bit like that Skippy, actually.
Aye.
Like he hated the gym, mate, but like he just didn't need to do it. He just naturally strong.
Maybe it was just light for him. Do you know what I mean? Probably walked in there and was like, "What is this? A bar with metal on it."
I just remember boys he played with hated him, like because he'd just stamp on their toes in the malls and stuff. Boys would have no toenails and just.
I shows that scrum half move, so you can imagine what it's like when you get a big boy
just a big lump, mate. They bloody stood on everyone's feet.
I love
that. Big lump.
He was wild. Once he got on the rumbos too after the game, he was wild, mate.
That sounds like a big Ennis character.
You'd find him game. Like back in the Club Damar days, he'd just be sitting there drooling and sleeping. Pissed himself.
What? Just straight rum?
Oh, on the bar, bit of coke.
Yeah,
the first couple had coke, and then he was in.
Disgusting.
And he just it just flick a switch. He was an animal. But then you just see him in Club the Mar. He'd like drool, shirt under, he pissed himself. The bouncers wouldn't go near him.
Aye, 'cause he's so big.
Oh yeah, but then he'd just wake up and then he'd carry on, mate.
A power nap in a place he cannot be moved.
He was an animal.
Massive fan of that. What a way to end the podcast.
That was brilliant.
Just envisage that. Fraser, thank you very much for giving us your
Thank
time
you.
and for
pleasure.
coming on.
Enjoyed
Miguel, absolute pleasure. Well done on the research, son.
Pleasure.
We actually managed to contribute a decent conversation, I think. Given
think-
it's our
I think
first
for a first pod,
podcast
we've-
episode.
Nothing's went too bad.
That's fairly natural.
I mean,
Just, a couple of lads chatting.
To be fair, I mean, we're now trying to get used to slavering shite on the radio, but we can be a little bit more explicit here. So thanks very much, gents. And obviously, we'll see you in the next episode. So if we didn't see you through the week, we'll see you through the windy.